Thank you for coming to our Restrictive and Discriminatory Covenant Modifications webinar. My name is Will Whitney, and I'm the Executive Vice President at BMI. And with me today is my colleague, Mike Offrank, also a Vice President and Account Executive, and our subject matter expert in title records, land records, and what we call RCs and DCs. And he's joining me today to provide some expert insight. Well, Mike.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
And we'll get right into it. So first, what we'd like to do here, nuts and bolts, just please raise your hand if you can hear me. All right. And if you can see my screen, please let me know. Excellent. Thank you very much. So you are muted. You're not on video, so please use the Q&A tool. If you have a question, we may not get to it during the actual webinar. We may just not see it, but I will check at the end if you have any questions along the way. Just put them there. We'll get to them at the end, or you can just wait and ask them at the end as well. So the purpose of today's webinar, three things. One, we're going to define what restrictive and discriminatory covenants are for you, describe the current situation with county recorders and land records in general that have these RCs, and then illustrate a solution to locate and identify and modify them. So first, what is a restrictive or discriminatory covenant? So from all the materials we've seen and what's been out in some of the states and counties, a restrictive discriminatory covenant is a phrase within historical land records specifically meant to discriminate against people basically for the sale, lease, rent, something of that sort in a property. And that discrimination can be based on race, color, veteran status, marital status, basically anything that restricts someone from either selling or buying, renting, leasing property. That's a discriminatory covenant. Anything to add to this basic description, Mike?
No, I think you've got it correct, Will.
Okay. So pretty high level, makes sense. Not letting someone do something related to property and land, it's discrimination. Now, we're going to go into restrictive covenants in California land records specifically for a second, because we are headquartered in California, so we're very familiar with this state's regulations and laws and whatnot, what's going on in the state. One of which specifically is AB, or Assembly Bill 1466. So quickly, some high-level notes about this is that the bill requires the 58 California county recorders to develop a plan to locate, review, and remove RCs, create redacted versions of them that remove the restrictive covenant language, and then re-record that redacted document into the recorder's recording system, and then keep a non-redacted copy for historical reference. Now, Mike has some more insight into AB 1466 because he's working with some folks on this bill. So Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Yes, AB 1466 was passed in September of 2021. And as mentioned, it requires the county recorders to locate, redact, and re-record restrictive covenants within historical land records. Now, to that end, BMI has developed a service software solution for our recorder clients to help become compliant with this new legislation. So through a combination of OCR and machine learning technologies, we've been able to locate these documents and present them to the county recorders for review, and then they're passed over to county council for their review and approval. BMI is contracted with numerous counties throughout California for this service. And Will, I think we've got a brief demonstration on the site that we built for this.
Yeah, something interesting about AB 1466 specifically, but also just RCs in general, is they're not new. These have been around in land records for decades, since, I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure specifically if the 1800s, but definitely the early 1900s and even through the 1960s, but they haven't been enforceable since, I think, the 60s as well. So even though these are in land records, they're not a new thing just because of the bills that relate to restrictive covenants. They've been around, not even enforceable, but there's just been a recent push to allow folks to proactively remove these from from their land records. So that's what AB 1466 is really about. Not that it's new RCs or DCs, they're not new. It's just there's a proactive push to get them removed, at least in California.
Well,
Other
just to add to
states-
this real quick,
Sure.
just to add to this, the majority of these restrictive covenants that we've found thus far in these projects, most of them are in the time periods of beginning in the mid 1920s and running up through the end of the 1950s. That's where 99% of these are lying.
Yeah, after they really peter off after the 50s, and then you get into the 70s, there may be a handful. I mean, 80s, 90s, today, these aren't even in there, but that chunk of time is definitely where the focus is. Now, compared to other states, California is a bit different in the sense that AB 1466 is a proactive effort in this, requiring the county recorders to have a plan to remove and then re-record these restrictive covenants. Many other states do have laws or assembly bills or House bills, excuse me, related to restrictive covenants that do allow for citizens to say, hey, here's my deed, whatever it is, and the restrictive covenant, I want it removed and then re-recorded. They do have the ability to do that, but there's no push like California is doing to say, okay, county recorders, do this as a whole. Like, can I take this entire restrictive covenant idea, and we want a plan to get rid of these and re-record. It's more on a one-off basis. Doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. I'm sure other states will start doing this soon, but right now, California, to our knowledge, is the only one that has a proactive effort in place. So a couple of restrictive covenant examples here. So this is from our early research into AB 1466. And this is pulled from some land records. So you can see we captured through OCR the word Caucasian. So this is basically saying you can't sell anything or the property to anyone that's not of the Caucasian race. So it's discriminating against folks that are not Caucasian. So it's a restrictive covenant. Cannot sell, lease, or rent to people of African, Mongolian, Asiatic descent. So it's restricting specifically these people. That's an RC. Again, African, Asiatic, Mongolian, not allowing them to do something, it's restrictive. Again, Caucasian or white race, only saying you can sell to them or buy from them, restricting anyone else. That's part of this program. So just some quick examples of what we found and just high-level examples of what you'll see in the land records related to restrictive covenants. Now, what we do have here is, now what? So you know what a restrictive covenant is. If you're in California, there's a requirement for this. If you're in other states, you may be thinking, a couple years ahead of when we probably will need to do this. Well, we may be required in the future. What do we do? Well, you have a program for it. So we could do this one-off, but what we've decided to do, once we heard about this law being passed, we immediately got our software team involved to build a platform for this, because a lot of recorders are our clients. We knew they'd need something. So we immediately got to work, create an application that is a one-stop portal to get those land records, locate, identify, and then redact the documents that have the RCs for re-recording. So what Mike has done is recorded a demo, which I have on screen here. It's about 3.5, 4 minutes. I'm going to play this so that you can see this, the system going from beginning of finding an RC to redacting it and providing it through a workflow to county council and re-recording.
Yep, very good. Okay, so this is the website BMI built. We're logging in as the county recorder. And here you see the document queue, and we've got 11 documents in the queue. You're going to click review, and it's going to bring up the cover page, and you'll notice we're completing the cover page as we go through the process. So here's the cover page where we have number of pages, the recording date, and the book and page information. So this is a common theme. We're going to be completing this cover page as we go through the workflow process. So as you scroll down to page 3, this is where BMI confirmed and located a restrictive covenant. So we're showing that paragraph where we've redacted with a see-through box the entire paragraph. And if the county recorder agrees that this language is a restrictive covenant, they're going to slide over and click the approve button, and they have the ability to place an electronic note for county council to review. It's not a requirement, but we did give you the ability to create a note there. So now you notice there's 10 documents in the recorder queue. That one we processed has now left our queue as the county recorder. So now we're logging out as the recorder, and we're going to come back and log in as county council. This is the AB legislation that requires county council to also review and approve. So here, there's one document, there's my note, and I can click review. And again, you're going to notice here as we go through the workflow, the cover page gets further completed here. And we still have the number of pages, the recording date, which you saw earlier, but you notice the county recorder's name and the computer date. So the county recorder's signature have been affixed to the cover page. Now council goes down to look at what the recorder found, and they are going to review this paragraph. And if county council does in fact agree that that's a restrictive covenant, they're going to click approve. And again, we give the ability for county council to place an electronic note in there as well. So that's the workflow process. And once county council approves the document, it comes back to BMI. The cover page will now be completed, which we're gonna bring up a PDF here in just a moment to show you what the final documents look like. But the reviewed and approved documents are going to come back to the county recorder via SFTP, so you can re-record them in your system. So what we're doing here is we're downloading a PDF so you can see what this completed cover page looks like. You'll notice now, as we scroll down, county council's signature has been applied along with the computer date. We've also checked the box. And from here, we're going to download a PDF. So you'll be able to see what these final documents are going to look like once you receive them via SFTP from BMI. So here's the final document, the completed cover page. And this is the truly redacted record, which would be re-recorded in your system. That completes our demonstration, Will.
Thank you, Mike, for jumping in there and helping me out the soundbite. Appreciate it.
No, it's all good.
All right, so and I always mess this. We're getting to the next page. Here we go. All right, so that's a demo of our application. Mike recorded that maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or so. So that is fresh. It's what the system looks like now. But we're going to go into some of this restrictive covenant tech in a little more detail. So on this page, I'm just going to describe a few pieces, and then we're going to go into each one of them on further slides. So first will be digitization. Then we're going to talk about some solution process. False positives are definitely part of the technology. Redaction, of course, and then the actual site and deliverable of those images. So first is digitization. And Mike, you want to talk about this?
Yes, thank you, Will. Job one for any project to locate these restrictive covenants is we need to digitize the historical records. So we have on the slides here, we've got a roll of microfilm, we have microfiche, we have aperture cards, we have books. So job one is for us to get these into a digital format so we can place them into our workflow using OCR technology, machine learning, to try to find these restrictive covenants. So in many cases, the microfilm is sufficient. We do have some situations here in California where BMI is actually scanning some of the hard copy books to replace poor quality images so we get better results. But this is really job one, regardless of which county you're in. We need to have digital images in order to provide this technology.
Yeah, and digitization, although 90% of the time it means hard copy to digital. So like those film, fiche, aperture cards, books, boxes of paper, whatever it is, to digital. There's also a form of digitization that we consider basically born digital or migration. So if you already have these records digitized, like you already scanned your film, you already scanned your books, but you don't have the solution, the system to actually run this restrictive covenant process, that's fine too. We don't need the hard copies to digitize and then run them through the platform. We could just take your already digitized copies and put them into that process as well. So born digital or electronic copies work as well. Anything else on this one, Mike?
All good, Will, thank you.
Keep going here. So the solution process, how we actually get the RCs identified, located, etc. So once they're in our application, this is specifically us, we can't speak to how other folks do it, but in our application, each image will have multiple passes through our workflow to find restrictive covenants. When they're identified, we will start adjusting parameters to then find more. So it's a bit of machine learning. So as we identify restrictive covenants, we will use that knowledge of, yes, this has been identified and confirmed as an actual restrictive covenant. We will use that to then basically teach our system to get better and better and better to find more and more accurately find them. There are multiple detection methods or algorithms, one of which is OCR, optical character recognition, which is what most people probably think about. Hey, just find the word and you're all set. That is part of it. And then there's ML or machine learning. So you're identifying words and phrases. That's a key nuance there, is phrases. And by using this machine learning technology, we're increasing the probability of detecting them and reducing false positives in the future. So not just identifying more of them, but also reducing some of that noise of finding the ones that are not actually restrictive covenants, which is a segue into this next slide of false positives. So you saw earlier, Caucasian, African, Asiatic, Mongolian terms, you go, oh, of course, that's going to mean it's a restrictive covenant in some way. Almost. Here are some examples of what you may think are restrictive covenants because of a word like Chinese. Well, if you were just finding that word, you'd pull up this and say, well, that's going to go through the process, get into the system, have recorders look at it. But that's not what they want to see, because that is not a restrictive covenant. It's actually an inventory, one carved Chinese chest. That's not restricting someone from buying, selling, leasing, whatever, piece of property. That's just describing it's a chest, it's a Chinese chest, it's inventory. That is not a restrictive covenant. We don't want that going through the process. Same with this, Persian Oriental rug, not restricting anything. Chinese rug again. This one's a little trickier because you see, well, color or race, Japanese. At first blush, you may think, well, that's describing them and going to restrict them from something. Not true, because this is just describing the person that likely owns that property. It's saying, well, they're Japanese. That's not restricting them from something, at least outside the context of what we're looking at. So that would not be considered a restrictive covenant. If it popped up here, that'd be a false positive. We would see that, say, nope, doesn't count, don't push it through. Same thing here, one last example. Now the redaction piece, Mike did some of that, touched on it during the demo, but what you have here is as Mike described, the see-through box. And Mike, you want to talk about redaction a little bit and how it works with our system, and then AB as the
Sure.
bill.
Yeah, as you saw in our demo, we're presenting these restrictive covenant documents to the county recorders. They have the ability to review, change, edit what BMI is redacted here. This is just an example, but again, once you approve it, you're going to kick it off to county council. County council is going to approve it. Then it's going to come back to BMI. And when we send it back to the county recorder via SFTP for re-recording, it's going to have this black box that you see here on the screen now. That's what the final documents are going to look like. However, as Will had mentioned, the legislation requires the original records to always remain intact for public records requests or other requests that come in. So we're never altering the original record. This is going to become a new record, and it's going to look like this with a black box.
Yeah, so that's a key, at least for now, that's what the law says. Could that change? Sure, but it's not completely removing the history of these records. It's saying, well, in the recording system that the public will the public record will be redacted, but the original for historical purposes will be preserved. Now the site and deliverable. So what we were showing, Mike was actually using records from one of our customers we've been working with for 4 or 5 months now. So we've been learning from that process, but there's a cover sheet. We do have flexibility, and you would have flexibility to annotate that cover sheet for however you see fit, because we created our application. It's in-house. We developed it ourselves. We have the ability to be a little flexible and change things based on what you need. Same with the workflow. Mike showed the workflow as it exists for customers we have now. Although some of them may have requirements that are different than others, we have the ability to change those, add processes, remove workflows, depending on what the individual customer needs. That's the nice thing about having our own system that is kind of standalone application, not requiring other pieces. There are custom reporting capabilities. Some customers want pretty detailed reports. Some are not as interested, but we have the ability to customize that. And then the deliverable formats for your target system. Mike would know much better than I do, but there are a few prominent recording systems out there that most recorders use, and we're very familiar with creating formats for the deliverables for those systems. However, if there's a specific format you need that's not one of the top 2 or 3 systems, we have the ability to adjust the deliverable to make sure it gets into your system and works properly. Anything you'd like to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, the majority of the recording systems that we see out here in California are with Tyler and with Granicus. Those are the 2 dominant recording vendors, I'd say. However, as Will mentioned, if you have any sort of a different system, as long as we know what the specifications are for your target system, we can customize that deliverable so that system can also digest this cover page and the documents that are being delivered back to you.
Yeah, this whole slide that we're looking at, the main thing is that we create this internally. It's our application. We're not using off the shelf or other pieces from other folks. So we have, you could call it unlimited flexibility. I don't want to put words in the software team's mouth, but having that adjustability is critical for our clients, because if they need something, we can almost certainly build it and get them what they need. And with that, I will check to see if there are any questions. That concludes Mike's and my portion of describing RCs and kind of what goes into that and the whole process and what RCs are. But let me see if there are any questions here. I don't see any that were written down during, but I'll just wait about 5 or 10 seconds to move on, just to make sure in case someone's typing right now, they have a question, we don't pass it up. So a couple more seconds and I'll keep moving on. Nope. Mike, you did a perfect job explaining this. No questions.
Thank you, Will.
Contact information. So if you are interested in learning more about this, or you have a project you want to look into this a bit more, that's my email, the simple version of it. So reach out to me. It's almost guaranteed I'm going to put you in touch with Mike, but instead of crowding the screen here, that's my email. You can always contact us through our website. And then just for more general digital information, you can hover your phone over the QR code and sign up for our newsletter, especially if you have that digitization portion need done. You have hard copies, you have these records, and you don't have a system that they're going into. A lot of information through our newsletter of videos, articles, and other webinars that come up. So we ask you to join that if it's something you're interested in learning more about, just digitization in general. And with that, that concludes our restrictive covenant webinar. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Mike, for helping out today. And
my pleasure, Will. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, folks. We'll get a recording out to all of you who registered, and we appreciate you joining. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a good day,
everybody.